Well, hello, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for jumping into the Rack and Power Open V3 forum, if you will. We will not have a presentation today. This is, we wanted to give some time to everybody that's at the show to jump in, ask questions about V3 or Rack and Power or OCP in general. So today you have myself, Caleb Lusk, and I'm a mechanical engineer with Rittal. I'm a project lead alongside Hamid here as well. So Hamid, I'll hand it over to you for a quick introduction.
Hi, hello everybody. My name is Hamid Kayhani from Facebook. I'm very glad to be on this call to answer any questions that you guys might have. I'm just looking at the slide. There's a little typo there. Caleb and I are the project co-leads, and Steve is a IC representative.
Oh, good, good catch there.
Yeah. Steve, go ahead.
Certainly. So, hello everybody. My name is Steve Mills. I'm a mechanical engineer at Facebook, and I am also the OCP Incubation Committee member representing all the Rack and Power projects and sub-projects. So thanks everybody for joining us today. As Caleb said, we're just here to answer people's questions. So at this point, whether it's OpenRack V3 or Rack and Power project, we're happy to answer anybody's questions. So I guess anybody that has some, we can just drop that into the chat and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and we'll feel free to put them either in the chat or the Q&A. We'll try to monitor both as we go through this, and then just flip back and forth. So.
First question, what is the submission status of V3 Rack Spec? Steve or Caleb?
I will take that one. So hi, Ethan. The current submission status is it's in progress. So we have generated the latest revision of the specification in support of building prototypes for this summit, which unfortunately we couldn't get to show anybody. The submission is currently developed inside of the Open Rack Frame CLA group. So it's a group of companies within Rack and Power that have signed a contributions licensing agreement with the foundation to work on this particular project. So there's quite a few companies in there that are working on it. And the goal is to have the next release of the specification available in the fall. So we can do another round of kind of prototype validation in that time frame. And let's see, what else can I tell you? So at that point, we're hoping the specification will be about 95% fixed, and then hopefully we can finalize it towards the end of the year, or maybe the beginning of 2021, where it would be kind of finalized, and it would be public, and everybody can start building accordingly. Earlier today, the preliminary CAD for the rack frame was published for everybody to see. So there's a link on the wiki page, and there was a note that went out to the Rack and Power mailing list today that also has the link. So if you want to see the preliminary CAD, primarily for people that are developing IT gear, that is now also available. So I think that's the status we've got right now. What do we have next? Okay, hopefully I've answered the next one from Keith, when we expect to be finalized, hopefully finalized towards the end of this year.
Maybe I can add slightly on the power system as well. It's going in parallel with the rack. We also send out the specs to the Rack and Power mailing list like a month ago, and in parallel with the rack design, we will also submit the next round of the specs with more details in the September timeframe for everybody to provide feedback.
I don't know if it'll work or not, but I'll go ahead and I'll try to post a link to that wiki page that Steve just mentioned there, where the section view of the CAD has been given. So that is out there, as well as if you're on the mailing list, you would have received it as well. So.
There's a question on here from Mark about when will a prototype OpenRack v3 be available for purchase. Caleb, I don't know if you want to handle that one.
It is, yeah. If Mark, if you want to message me afterward, or find me in the lounge or at the Ratal booth, we can chat about potentially purchasing a V3 prototype.
I go with the next question. Is there going to be a spec for PBU in the V3? The answer is yes. The PBU spec, design and spec has already been started. We initially started with the power system, and then we started the PBU. The first draft of the spec is ready, and I will try to send out to the mailing list pretty soon. And together we are working with we have started the CLA and engaging with the suppliers also to help on the development. So watch on the mailing list. I will send out the spec pretty soon, and we will be open for any feedback that you guys might have, helping to incorporate in the spec and the design.
Okay, I can take the next question from Raul. He has a question in regards to the latest rail proposal. Is there any information about standard specification on latching mechanisms for the servers? The short answer to that is no. We have not developed a design guide yet for IT gear and how it interfaces with the rack. One of the reasons that we're publishing this preliminary CAD is so that people can start looking at it and thinking about it. And then we'll probably bring kind of a design guide or best practices later on this year once we're confident everything's kind of finalized and we can get everybody kind of final tolerances for everything. And then we'll publish that through the Rack and Power project once it's available. But we'd like everybody to kind of take a look at it so that when we go through and develop it, people have had some time to look at it and then can provide feedback as we go through the creation of that. So So that's a good question. What else is next, gentlemen?
Let's see. Are you planning to provide 2D drawings, or V2 is not full detailed drawings? Production years complained. So I don't know if 2D drawings are planned to be submitted. The full model is planned to be submitted as far as CAD goes for V3. Let's see here. Steve, I think, did you answer the one? There was one in the Q&A about when Facebook will start deployment of V3 in their data centers.
Yeah, and as of right now, we don't have public dates for that. So I can't really provide a whole lot of information. There was a question on here from Erica about how to join the connector spec discussion. So I can talk about that real quick. So there's two different groups that are working on new interconnects for rack and power. There's one, both of them are for the power shelf. There is the kind of a universal input connector into the power shelf, and then there is a 48-volt output connector that takes the power from the power shelf and puts it onto the bus bar for everybody, for all the other components in the IT and the rack to use. And then we'll probably also be starting one to update the IT gear interconnect, like a 48-volt IT gear interconnect. There's some definition around that in the current 2.2 specification, but we will probably come up with some embodiments, some more detailed embodiments as we go forward. The easiest way to get involved in any of those would be to kind of reach out to any of the three of us directly, and we can get you in touch with those groups that are working on those. Or just send a ping out to the Rack and Power mailing list, and we'll see that, and we can help anybody that's interested in getting involved in developing any of those three connector specifications.
Yeah, and that's a good point to bring up, that there are multiple meetings or groups developing those different connectors. Because Erica, I'm not sure. Steve, I believe Brian is in those, so they may already be part of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
So let's see.
Go ahead.
A couple more questions here. Are the bus bar dimensions for V3 the same as V2? So that's a good question. Bus bar dimensions, as far as volume-wise, the bus bar takes the same volume. In V3, it's 48 volt, so it is different from V2 of the 12 volt, and attachment methods are different. But Mariana, if that answers your question as far as dimensions go, if they're the same or not, you can chat if that doesn't answer the question. But volume-wise, it is the same volume per se.
I'll take the next question from Mark Lerner. Is there a one OU PowerShell design that provides two AC inputs that each fully power all 6 PSUs? What I see now is that input 1 powers 3 PSUs and input 2 powers 3 PSUs, which is not full AC redundancy. So let me explain slightly more. There are two ways to think about redundancy. You could have it n+1 redundancy, or you could have n+n or 2n redundancy. What we have designed for the 1U shelf is N+1. The reason it has two input feeds is that for some location with the 20 amps, it cannot, the feed cannot provide power to all the 6 rectifiers, 18 kilowatt basically. So it's not being designed to be N+N with 15 kilowatt or 18 kilowatt. You could think about using it as N+N, but the maximum power you would get is like 9 kilowatts. The 2U solution is basically designed for the N+N or 2N. I think this is probably the one that you want. So if you want to have a 2N approach, you have to go with a N+2N solution in a 2OU, which you will get 18 kilowatt. Thank you. That was a good question.
So Hamid, I think there's another good question for you from Rick. I'll read it to you real quick. It's, will a spec for the PowerShelf PMC, the Power Management Controller, be released?
Yeah. That's also another, the PMC is another important piece of the project. It's basically for the communication downstream and upstream of the PowerShelf. We have started working on it. Actually, we have the first draft of the PMC ready. We wanted, I think next week we are going to review it with all the people, with all the companies through CLA, and week after, and get their feedback, make sure everybody is in line. And the week after, I would be glad to send it out to the mailing list. So make sure you sign up for the mailing list so to get the communication over there. Rack and Power mailing list.
Steve, there's one here. I'm not sure if you can answer it, but I'll ask the question that was asked. Who do you expect to be the main supplier of V3 racks? Rittal, Delta, etc.?
Sure. So that's not a question that we have decided on yet. Right now, we're just focused on developing specifications, and then we will work out, suppliers later on. That's true for everything related to OpenRack, right? Right now we're just in the spec generation phase of the development. So, thanks for your question. There's a question on here from Eric about the status of the output connector. For the output connector, we have the preliminary specification for the output connector completed. The prototypes have been integrated into the prototype power shelves that we're using right now for evaluation. And once we get feedback from the evaluation of those connectors, then we will go through and update the specification again based on our learnings. So it's still in development. Like most of the products, we've got our first revision out for everybody to look at. Or not out for everybody to look at, but out for people that are in the individual groups to review. So thanks. It's a good question. So these are all great questions. So yeah, keep them coming. This is exactly what we're here for today.
Yeah, and Ralph, thank you for jumping in there. Actually, I know you can't talk, but we can see your chats back to a few others. It's good to see other folks jumping in and actually answering some questions too. And you gave some clarification. I appreciate that. You said this relates back to Ms. Lee's question earlier, where she asked if the V2 and V3 bus bar were the same geometry or something of that nature. And yeah, you went into, so yeah, V2 is 12 volt. It is two separate power zones, and V3 is the 48 volt where the power shelf can be placed anywhere. So a good presentation. If you were not able to attend it, was maybe an hour and a half ago, and I'd encourage you to go back and look. That was from Glenn and Steve that went through V3. I forget the name of the presentation, but yeah, it's in Rack and Power, and they went through many different features of the rack development. So, good question, good answer.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of detail in that presentation. So it's really good, and it should be available now since it's been presented already, right? It should be available now for streaming on demand. So it looks like Nikolai has some question about the bus bar detailing in V2, and that's true. There's no manufacturing documentation on the design details around the bus bar for V2, and that's the interface. So we have defined the interfaces between the bus bar and the rack. Rital submitted those, was it last year, Caleb? It's been at least a year.
Yeah, at least a year.
So there's a specification out on the Rack and Power wiki, as well as in the contributions database on the OCP website, that defines all the interfaces between the bus bar and the rack. So what this does is it enables anybody that follows that specification to then go out and talk to different bus bar suppliers and get the bus bar solutions that you need and integrate those into your rack. So if you don't want to go through the process of developing your own bus bar solution, you can go out into the market and buy existing solutions from other suppliers and through that interface document, put it onto your rack. So that's the process we've got right now on V2 to kind of help enable companies that are not interested in developing it from scratch can still build racks and ship those. So that's a good question.
I'll take the next question from Nikolai. He's asking for the placement of the RMC in the power shelf. I hope by RMC you mean PMC. We actually decided to name it PMC, Power Management Controller. I know in the past we used RMC, later we used SMC. But anyway, there is a slot. There is a slot on the power shelves. One is it is with like a 50 millimeter wide that is being placed directly on the power shelf. You can so if you look at the either 1U or 2U power shelves, it is there is one on one of the sides, which is actually the communication with the rest of the system connects to that, and then it goes to the top of the rack. So please go back and look at the presentation that we had earlier today. You will see it there. It's on the front, so it is serviceable from the front with the card edge connector.
So Hamid, there's another question from Sam. I'll read it to you real quick. It's can the 2U option, this is related to the power shelf, so it's roughly the 36 kilowatt, still have a BBU shelf?
So the BBU is up, and the BBU on power shelves are completely independent, and the BBU is optional. And if you want to increase the rack power, so you may want to go with you place 2 power shelves, or use the 2U power shelf and consider it as a N+1. You can get to 33 kilowatts. You can have the battery. You may or may not desire to have the battery shelf in the rack. If you want to use the battery, then you have to use like 2 sets of batteries to get to 33 kilowatts. So that shouldn't be a problem. Although on the bus bar, the main bus bar is going to be designed for 18 kilowatts from top to the bottom. So if you go with 33 kilowatt, you may have to put the power shelf and battery shelf next to each other in the middle. So each side, top and bottom, would be like supporting 18 kilowatts. Thank you. That was a good question. Yeah.
Yeah. To add to that, if you want some more detail or to kind of the architecture, there's several presentations that you'll see today where they'll go through detailed concepts, and you'll see a lot of the features related to how the power shelf architecture work and the BBU architecture works for OpenRack v3. So I'd encourage you to look at the Rack and Power agenda today, get a lot more detail around those. So, yeah, thank you.
Yep.
So there's a question from Howard, and I don't know, I personally can't understand exactly what you're going for there, Howard. I don't know if either you two understand, but if you can provide some more detail to that, maybe we can help you out.
Is that question about the bar clip bus bar connector?
From Howard Granite.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the bar clip bus bar connector.
Yeah, I think he's asking more. I'm guessing he's asking more about the connector on the battery module that slides in the power shelf, and then if there would be a battery. So there would be Howard, there would be a bus spec for that. We are actually putting down the details there. Once we see the spec, there would be you would see all the what type of connector we have used and the signals that we have specified. The connector is PowerPlate Ultra with a 25 signal pins, and we have our team is working on that, and I think they will share it very soon. David Sun specifically is leading this piece of this project, the BBU solution. So I will work with him to share the spec to the OCP very soon. It would have all those details. Thank you for asking.
So we're down to a couple minutes left here. I don't know if we're going to be able to get through all of the questions or not, but again, we really appreciate you guys asking all of these questions. It's great to see the interaction here, and definitely reach out to us afterward, or again, throw them to the mailing group, and we'll try to get additional questions answered. There was one, let's see here, did we get this one? Haven't noticed elements like bridges on ORV3. No more need to stamp matrix. I'm not sure if that's referring to on V2, there's bridges that act as a stop and a guide for equipment at the rear of the rack. If that's what you're referring to as bridges, yes, you're correct. Those are not now out of the design for V3. And that particular feature where the equipment basically goes into and locates is part of the equipment shelf now, if that answers that question. So down to 1 minute left. You guys see another question we can grab real quick?
Question.
Take a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Hamid.
Go ahead.
Oh, this was mainly for you anyway. Mike Smith is asking about is there consideration of the PSUs to control the load split in order to balance the phase currents versus the DC load if there's multiples of 3 rectifiers.
Yeah. I was actually trying to address that question. That's a very interesting question. I think basically the question, if I explain it slightly more, is that if you have can we have it like place 8 rectifier or 7 rectifier and don't think about the current phase unbalancing on the rack? My answer response is we are currently thinking about always have a group of 3 rectifiers on the rack. The reason is that we need that power. But for that approach, that if you have 8 rectifier, if you have not a group of 3, we have a solution for it. And the solution is that on the racks actually move the rectifier. So for example, if you have 4 rectifiers and the 3 of the rectifier on a phase A, B, C, and the 4th rectifier is on phase A. So on one rack you put it on phase A, on the second rack you put it on phase B, on the third rack you put it on phase C. So then overall, and then you keep doing the same thing. So overall, the current through the data center, the current would be balanced. That was a very great question. Thank you, Mike Smith. I think we are out of time. Thank you so much for joining this call and great questions. Yeah. Philip, are we good to close the call?
Yes.
That's a wrap. Thank you, everybody, again, and we look forward to hopefully the next time we can see everybody. So we'll try to get to the other questions as soon as we can through email. Thanks, everybody. Much appreciated. Bye for now.